You are not going to get any breaks for ignorance of the law. That is not a legal excuse. So you must do your research ahead of time.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today, we're providing an update on traveling with your firearm. Now, this is one of the first videos that we had on this channel. It's been a few years, so we need to update it and talk about traveling interstate with your firearm. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And today, Em, what are we talking about?
Well, we're going to talk about traveling in your vehicle intrastate. You could harken back to that first video, but I will say that watching those early videos of us feels a little bit like when you remember something really embarrassing and you cringe to yourself. For me, at least.
There's a little of that.
We've come a long way. This is traveling in your vehicle, not air travel. We'll do that again later, but just I'm going to hop in the car. Summer's coming up. What do I need to do to get state to state with my firearm? And more specifically, I think let's talk about handguns specifically.
Yes.
Because that's just what I think most people are imagining. And I will say, first and foremost, we're going to talk through federal law, but you must, even if you are going to a place where you say, I believe that my handgun license is recognized. I believe they may have some permitless carry options. Check ahead of time. Make sure that the item you are bringing is legal in that state. And there are, my best example of this is Colorado, right? Generally fairly gun friendly in that it will, let's say, recognize my Texas license. However, lots of my guns are not Colorado compliant. So make sure that you are doing your research on the front end before you even engage in this federal safe passage law that I'm going to bump over to Richard to start talking about.
Yeah. So we have, 27 permitless or constitutional carry states.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about the two newest additions and when those go into effect kind of at the end. But we have to talk about the federal safe passage provision of 18 U.S.C. 926A because we have a handful of states where they just do not recognize the Second Amendment. They don't respect the right to keep and bear arms. But, maybe there's some place that we want to travel around these places. And so we have to talk about it. But there's three key components to passing through one of these gun hostile states that you need to make sure that you comply with so that you may have a defense at trial should you get charged with maybe a gun crime in one of these unfriendly states. And the first one, I'll kick us off and then send it over to Emily. You have to have a legal start and legal finish. So an example is, what if we are in Florida and we are traveling up to the great state of Maine? Possession of a firearm in both those states without a license or permit to carry is needed. And so your possession would be legal in both of those states. Now, a question that we got in our original video that we filmed a few years ago. You're telling me I got a red eye, no sleep, drive from Florida to Maine and for my legal start to legal finish? No, that's not the case. You would look at the place where maybe before you enter that gun hostile state, maybe you stop in the state of Pennsylvania, for example, before you continue on your journey. That would be okay.
Right. Remember, though, even if your final destination is Maine and it's your main vacation, if you stop in, let's say, New York overnight, New York is your finish for the purposes of this law, even though you're not considering New York to be your vacation state. If you stop and you rest for the evening, frankly, even if you do much less than that, we'll talk about that in a second, that is potentially your finish state. So make sure that any place that you happen to stop and take your long breaks on the way is a legal compliant state, or else you're going to lose this protection.
Yeah, that's what we call the second key component, which is traveling.
Mm-hmm.
You can't cease traveling for purposes of protection under this law. So no detours, no delays, straight through.
And traveling is not defined by federal law in this code. So we don't really know what it means, except that we can look at some examples of prosecutions. We can just sort of, extrapolate from things that we know happen and say, stopping for gas, stopping for a quick restroom break, probably completely fine. You are still engaging in your travel.
Stopping to see the biggest ball of yarn in the United States? Probably not.
Probably not. Right. Stopping overnight, definitely not traveling. And then anywhere in between, you're taking a big gamble. So let's say you are in Maryland and instead of driving through the fast food drive-through real fast to get a meal. You actually stop, go in someplace, sit down, enjoy something a little bit more luxurious. Have you ceased traveling? Well, we don't have a statute to tell us yes or no. So the answer is maybe a jury will decide, right?
Exactly
You
right.
could potentially be arrested and have to argue to your jury that that was not a cessation of travel. So be very, very careful.
So legal start, legal finish, not ceasing traveling. And then our third key component is how the firearm actually has to be transported when we're in these unfriendly states. And that's unloaded, encased, and, not accessible or locked up. So there's a couple of different ways that this could look like. So let's say you have a truck where there isn't a trunk. All we have is a passenger compartment. The way that you would travel through a gun unfriendly state in order to get the protection of the safe passage provision is the firearm would have to be unloaded, encased, and locked up. I'd put it as far away from you as possible because, having that added argument, hey, this was inaccessible is great. That's what that would look like compliant wise. What would an example look like in just a traditional sedan?
In your trunk is great. Again, if you do not have a trunk, my SUV doesn't have really a totally enclosed trunk. We are talking about in a locked case as far back towards the boot as I can possibly get it. So just make sure it is inaccessible to you or as inaccessible as humanly possible. Hard-sided locking case is a great addition, frankly, even if it is also going in the trunk, because lawyers like redundancies.
Yes, no, exactly right. So legal start, legal finish, not ceasing traveling, and then unloaded, encased, locked up, inaccessible.
And remember, your ammunition has to be inaccessible as well and
Exactly
locked
right.
up. So can't have your bullets, rolling around your floorboards. I don't know who does that. Some people,
Yeah.
certainly. So, but just bear in mind that must also be locked up.
And then the note on the federal safe passage provision that we have to talk about is that it creates a possible defense to prosecution at trial. So what we do see happening still, and this is where you got to be very careful if you come from, like a state like Texas, where if you're driving in the state of New York with a Texas license plate, you have a target on your back because they could still theoretically charge you with that state gun crime, that state possession crime. But then this federal defense to prosecution would come in at trial.
Yes. So that means being arrested, having to bond out, having to travel back to that state probably once a month to get your case reset for a period of a year plus until finally you're ready for trial and to assert that as your affirmative defense. It is a process. You never hope it's going to play out like that, but a lot of these gun unfriendly states like to wear that like a badge of honor. We, treat this as a true affirmative defense, which is crappy behavior, but what do you expect from New York and New Jersey?
Yeah. And the next thing we have to talk about is the majority of states now have permitless or constitutional carry, and we have two new additions to this list. The latest one is Florida, which is effective July the 1st, 2023, and then the state of Nebraska, which is effective September the 7th, 2023.
Yes, but remember that Florida is concealed constitutional carry
Exactly
only
right.
because open carry is Florida's kryptonite.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't understand it. We've gone constitutional carry, but you still can't open carry under virtually any circumstance. I think there's maybe like a hunting exception or something crazy. We're not Florida lawyers. But anyway, Florida, get it together.
But there are some other exceptions in the constitutional carry laws or permitless carry laws where, you have to be 21 years of age or older. It applies to handguns only. In our two examples here, they have to be concealed. So it's good to check the law beforehand.
Yes, you've got to check. Not just, we talked about checking to see if that firearm itself was legal. You also need to look and see, where can I carry this? What are the rules? What kind of signs might I have to look for? You are not going to get any breaks for ignorance of the law. That is not a legal excuse. So you must do your research ahead of time.
Yeah, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And if you have questions about flying with a firearm, we do have that video available here. And as always, leave us a question or a comment below. And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.